I think a good deal of the objection that students make to grades, those who don't like to receive grades, is based largely upon this notion of a personal comparison between themselves and another. Now, there are other objections to grades that seem to me really without any foundation, but there is a psychological point here, that if the grade is used as a sledgehammer, then of course it becomes altogether dysfunctional and destructive. Still, I would not go so far as to say that grades as such are useless, since if the teacher relates to them adequately, he is telling something to the student about the student's own performance with respect to a given task.
Yeah, I understand that. But you as a teacher had 5 students or 10 students in the real sense.
Yes.
You would help one of those 10 to love the thing he's doing, whatever it is, gardening or whatever it is.
Yes.
And there is no grade in that. The more I learn, the more I love. I don't say, well, you must have a grade in your mind about me. You watch me. You say, well, that's not quite right, this is right, let's talk it over. You follow, there is that relationship in which all sense of making me conform to your ideal disappears. Therefore, there is a relationship of real affection, and that is enough. It's like a sunshine and a flower.
Isn't it the case that a person could indeed love flowers, love his garden, love gardening as an appreciator, but might not be gifted as a grower?
No, then I study. Then I'll find out.
But
you may not have the green thumb, and you say, well, I'll find out.
He turns around and he says, after he's planted this flower, well, how am I doing? and he means to ask you whether he has done well or ill in the way he has planted the flower.
Therefore, the way you tell him how he has done, that is important, not whether better grades or this or that. The way you convey to me that I've done, it's not quite right, or this is quite right, that is done marvelously. Your very look is sufficient. That means you have to be extraordinarily sensitive.
Yes. I know how very true that is, because oftentimes one has the feeling that a student who might not be too gifted nonetheless does have a capacity which still stands to be reached and actuated.
Yes, sir, but you see the difficulty. All religions are based on this comparison. Eventually reach the foot of God or sit next to God. They're all the priestly hierarchical methods. The bishop, the priest, the bishop, the archbishop, the cardinal. This whole hierarchical sense is a competitive sense. And religion, business, family, the whole structure is based on that. And you bring up a child to fit into that. Whereas if you say, look, you're my child, I'm going to look after you. I'm going to see that you are the most marvelous human being on earth. Totally. Not just technologically, but psychologically, spiritually. and you produce quite a different entity.
Do you think perhaps this notion of hierarchy has been badly applied because we tend to believe that hierarchy is static rather than functional?
Functional, yes, it is functional, but don't bring status into it.
The parent, this teacher who loves his family of students, is still the parent. And in that sense, a functional hierarchy persists. And
Yes,
wouldn't that be natural?
Yes, but after all, you may be a first-class engineer, maybe a cook. But see what takes place. You are a top engineer, and I'm a top cook.
Yes. Well, that's what I meant by functional.
Don't let's introduce status into it.
Yes, no, I quite follow.
You the Cadillac and I the Jeep.
No, I quite follow.
So that brings up a really quite a different thing, which is there psychologically progress at all? Because that's what is what's behind this. That psychologically, inwardly, you will grow better and better and better and better, which is self-improvement. All that's implied in. After all, that is the basis of so-called religious hierarchy. You are gradually getting nearer and nearer God. The whole Brahmanical system is based on that. The lowest born will gradually evolve till it becomes Brahman, then it will go on gradually. And whether there is such a thing as a permanent entity in you which gradually evolves, or this whole thing is totally wrong.